Sheryl Sandberg's book. I don't know if anyone's read it.
No.
And I read it, and it was quite interesting because where I first read about it could have been probably in the Time magazine or something like that. And her book is called Lean In, and she talks about the fact that when you have opportunities, women should lean in, which I'll come back to what that means. And the following week, it must have been the Time magazine, there was this whole lot of letters, and probably what you've experienced of judgment against her. How dare she tell women to lean in? The most important thing is to be home with children. And the other side of it was, you know, really bashing her. It's easy for her to talk, but she's got a supportive husband and lots of money and a housekeeper and a chef and a driver, and it's easy for her, and a lot of negativity about her. And because it's a particular area of interest of mine for lots of different reasons, I thought I'll read it myself and make my own opinions. So maybe I'll start with that. One of the reasons it's of particular interest to me is because I am a working mom, and I've always been a working mom. Now my kids are older, but I always have. And I've loved working. And I've never wanted to be at home much. I'm very devoted to my children, but even now I'm now a grandmother. My daughter said, "When are you going to be a full-time granny?" And I said, "Never."
Yeah,
I'm happy to see them. I love my grandkids, but I'm just never going to be one of those people. So I was interested, to know. So those one, hi. Welcome.
Is this working mothers
Correct.
stress?
Yeah.
Come inside.
Yeah.
We've just started, and I was
I'm
saying
not a
I'm
working
basic.
mum, but I'm stressed.
So I know a lot of the conflict that one has, and then the other side of it is being a psychologist. I deal with both sides. I have, you know, the moms who aren't working, who have their own feelings of they want to actualize themselves and frustration and boredom and still being not sure they're doing the right thing. Those that are working that feel guilty. There's all stress on both sides of it. And then the third reason is that I specialise in treating stress and anxiety. So I thought, you know, when I saw her book, this is a good starting point for a discussion. I read the book and I was really pleasantly surprised. It's written in a very down-to-earth way. You could really relate to her. And what she's saying is not what critics are saying. The first thing she says is that you can't do it all. Something has to give. And she quotes lots of top businesswomen. Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. She says you can't do it all. So she talks about, and I'm sorry that I didn't bring my notes with me. I've done 3 presentations and somewhere I left today's at home. So I can't tell you the names of people, but I assure you it's in her book. People who ran Yahoo and other top businesswomen who have spoken about the fact you can't do it all. So you need to make a decision whether it's going to be your housework, maybe it's your social life. It's something that will have to give, but even Sheryl Sandberg, with all her support, can't do it all. And it's about really prioritizing how you're going to do with it. So that's, I suppose, the first practical tip. It's about really prioritizing and giving up this idea that you actually have to be perfect. Like this is just my first chapter of my first book is about this myth that we have to be perfect, and we kill ourselves. We've got to have perfect homes, they've got to look immaculate, our kids have got to be immaculately dressed, perfectly mannered, gourmet meals, you know, fabulous life with our husband. You know, we've got to have it all, and we're killing ourselves. So whether you're working or not working, but more so if you're working, you actually have to decide what it is that's going to give. And it's quite a relief when you actually let something go. And I think this woman from Yahoo was the one who said, you know, housework is what's gone for her. She has someone who comes in once or twice a week, and it's really not her main priority that her house looks like it's out of home and gone. So this is part of where one has to work for oneself. The second thing is that I think it's really fine for a woman to want to actualize herself. And not everybody wants to be home all day. Not everyone enjoys it. Not everyone is a good mother. A lot of people enjoy expressing themselves, and we shouldn't have to feel guilty about it. And we do live in this world where we feel guilty. A friend of mine who's a psychologist went to the hospital recently, and she said she was shocked because all along the wall there were these posters about breastfeeding. And she felt for all her clients that were stressed about not being able to breastfeed. The message is, you know, breastfeeding is the only way, and of course it's a preferred way, But this idea of being the earth mother, natural births, being at home all day, doesn't fit everybody. And so it's okay, and this is what Sheryl Sandberg is saying, it's okay to want to have a career. And we live in a world where it's okay. The part that's controversial is that she talks about leaning in. And this is the part that I related to the most. She says that, especially before her time, it was my time, feminists fought to have equal pay. We fought to be in the workforce. We fought to be equal, but actually the statistics show that we're very badly off. So it's something like the world leaders, the number of women that are world leaders are less than they were, I think, in the 1980s. Women on boards in companies are less than they used to be. And what seems to be happening is that as women, as a movement or as a group, we are withdrawing and no longer feeling that we should be pushing forward in our careers. And whatever that is, so she gives the example, she says, even before women are married and have children, they're making poor decisions. So she will interview somebody for a job. She's now at Facebook, she was at Google. She's interviewed many people, and she'll interview a young girl in her late 20s, and she'll say, would you like to do this? And she can see the girl thinking, and then she says, and the girl said, well, I would like to be getting married and have babies, so I won't take that role. And often they're not even in a relationship. And this I thought was a really unique point that she was bringing up. And she would say, well, lean in, do it in the meantime. Start when you can, but women are holding themselves back, and she sees it as a major problem. Now, why is it a major problem? She doesn't focus as much as I'm doing today on self-actualization. She says the world is worse off because we women are holding ourselves back. And having just heard about, I wasn't there, this woman is saying, well, women hold up half the sky. There's so much we can do. There's so much women contribute and should contribute in leadership. We know that when women are running companies and they're on the board of companies, there are better work practices. There are fairer work ideals. And so what has happened in the 80s, there was a huge movement forward, and for whatever reason, she doesn't explain it and I can't, we've pulled back and we have a situation where women are afraid to lean in. So she gives an example when she was at Google and she was pregnant and she couldn't find a parking place one day. And she had to park, I don't know how far it was, and she was lugging whatever, her laptop, and she walked in and she went to the CEO and she said, there should be a parking place for pregnant women. And the guy said, well, we never thought about it. It was fixed like that. She used it as a simplistic example, but she said, we need to think about women who may want to work while they're pregnant, or may want to have young kids who have childcare. We need to lean in, and we are doing each other a disservice by not doing that, because we're actually going backwards in world statistics of what we were able to do. So the message of her book is, whatever it is that you're going to do, is don't be afraid and don't hold yourself back because you think one day, or you are pregnant. She gives the example of this woman who actually left Yahoo and came onto Facebook. And we're talking about, serious businesswoman. And this woman was a few months pregnant, and she wanted to move to Facebook, and she said, and I admit that I'm pregnant. She said, yeah, we'll deal with it. Lean in. Say you want to do this, and we'll move together. We'll find a way to work it out. And this woman was lambasted in the press because she took the job, she had the baby, within 3 weeks she was back at work, and you can imagine everybody had a go at her. And why? She said, why? She has a whole chapter, and again I apologize for not having it in front of me, a whole chapter of statistics, and I've looked at them all, and I've looked at them over many years. There's no correlation between children's distress, anxiety, depression, and whether or not mothers work. Absolutely. Now, we're not talking about 5 years of research. We're talking of 30 years of research where people have looked at, are children whose mothers work worse off? The answer is no. There is no difference. So that's one of the ways to try and let go of the guilt. Absolutely no difference. In fact, and this is less known, Very often kids whose mothers work have better self-esteem growing up, and certainly as adults. Why? Because self-esteem is not something you can teach. A lot of mothers, I mean, it's one of my areas that I do a lot of work in, like how do you build self-esteem? But if you're a mother who is inadequate and anxious, feels inadequate and feels anxious, you can't tell your kids, be brave, go out there and feel good. But if you're a woman who feels brave and can go out there and do things, your kids breathe it in, it goes into their cells, that's who they are. So what she was saying, again citing examples of other top businesswomen, kids will always moan about their mothers, whatever you do. This is what we have to accept. It's not easy. You try your best. You know, this is Jewish mother guilt. I work so hard for you. I try my best. I do everything and it's still not good enough. But that is what happens. So when kids are little, can I just finish my train of thought now? When kids are little, they idealize us. And then they reach an age, probably pre-teens, about 10 or so, that they start losing that idealization and they start being critical. And their criticism is something like, and so just this week, but Susie's mother doesn't. Susie's mother's around to give lifts. Susie's mother bakes the chocolate cake. You know, Alan's dad buys him the latest iPod. It'll always be something because that's what they do. And then they go through that phase where, you know, you were just the worst parents. They wouldn't be where they were if you had done this, this, and this. And that's part of individuating. It's a normal developmental process. Because kids actually go through the rage that they have to stand on their own 2 feet. Someone's to blame, that there's no one to fix my problem. I have to go and solve it myself. And who's to blame, mom and dad? So if you were at home and you didn't work and there was less money, that's the reason. If you had gone out and worked, like Susie's mother, then I would have had a better education and I wouldn't be in this position and I wouldn't have to work so hard. If you did work, if you didn't work, like Mary's mother, and you'd done extra homework with me, I wouldn't have been in this position. It's a normal progression, and generally what happens when kids hit 25 plus, we know neurologically they say things start settling down, but even not neurologically, they start to understand and be more receptive to their parents. And what generally happens is that if you've been a working mom, and you've been a good mom, they often respect you for having done that. Which doesn't mean I'm not putting down mothers who don't work, but for those mothers who are guilty, it doesn't mean that. They will respect you for who you were. And often you have taught them a lot of life skills along the way. So either way, it's about you being okay with your life choice, and your kids will come to respect you for that if you can just survive those years when they're going to really be angry with you. That's the trick, is how to survive it and to understand. Now, it doesn't mean you let yourself off the hook. It doesn't mean you just behave badly. It means you've got to be a good mom. You've got to be an attentive mom. What does it mean? It means you've got to hold your child in your head. You've got to think about them and think about what they need and the best way of providing it. And if you work and you personally can't provide it, you can try, and there's some things only you can do, but there are a lot of other things that other people can do. And more today we have men who are very supportive and very involved in parenting as well. So it's not letting you off the hook and saying behave any way you like. But if you know that you've been a good mom, and in terms of attachment, and in terms of understanding, and in terms of giving real emotional content to your child, then it's just a matter of going through the developmental process. What she's saying on a deeper level than all of the psychological thing is that we need to stop holding ourselves back, and we need to know that if we would like to work, and not everyone wants to, and if we want a career, we should not be afraid to lean in. And when we do, not only is it good for us if that's what we want, but it's good for womanhood, and it's actually good for the world. The other point I want to mention, which I really related to, is the idea today that women who are in business, there's something wrong with them. And again, this is a total backward step. So how it is seen today is that if you are successful at business, you're not feminine in some way. So they did a test, one of the tests that she cites. It was called the Howard and Heidi test. So they did it to quite a few thousand people, and they gave a story. They said Howard is 23 years old, and he's ambitious, and he's got a career plan marked out, and he's going to build this business empire. And people had to rate him on a whole lot of categories. They then substituted the name Howard with Hardy. Exactly the same wording, and they gave it to the same or different number of thousands of people. Howard got rave reviews. Go for it, Howard. Good on you. You get in your career and you push yourself forward and you do whatever you need to do. And Heidi was completely criticized as being not feminine, as being aggressive, as being competitive. The word bossy. They say bossy is a word that is used for women. For some reason they don't use it for men. Women are always bossy. Men are assertive, women are bossy.
Men are bullies.
Oh, they're bullies. And, this idea that, so this poor Hardy, this fictional Hardy, got all this criticism for being this aggressive, career-driven, unfeminine kind of woman. So this is what's very sad, and this is what actually the message of her book is, that we're not really that much further than we were in the 70s. Salaries are also not as high as they should be. That's another area she talks about leaning in. Women will not go and ask for increases. Men will go in and say, this is the job I'm doing, I want an increase, and women won't. We wait to be recognized. We wait for our boss to say to us, you're doing well and you're going to be recognized. So she talks about and gives lots of examples of people who actually, women who are encouraged to go, say this is what I'm worth and this is what I'm asking for. So I'll just answer the question now. Sorry, I put you on hold for a while.
Oh, no, it's okay, actually.
Okay. So what she talks about in the end, she doesn't really talk a lot about stress. Her whole message is the world needs women, and why are we holding ourselves back when we should be contributing more to the world. My message is what contributes to stress, and how, if we are working, can we reduce the stress. So one of the things is that we do try and have it all, and we try to be perfect. Then they're two different things. The one is we want to do it all, and the second thing is we have to do it perfectly. And so adjusting expectations and being realistic is really important in how to manage stress. When you don't have to do it all yourself, there are actually lots of things you can do. So I'm analytically trained, and now I do a lot of CBT, because often it's getting housekeeping, literally and figuratively right, that reduces stress. Just don't tell any of my analytic mentors I'm saying this, but it's actually true. I was quite cynical about it in the beginning. And sometimes you sit down and you say, why are you running around like this? I wouldn't ask in these words, but the idea is, let's think about what's going on. If you're working 6 days a week and you're so stressed, there's a simple answer. It's called online shopping. You put on your list, and once a week you click the list and you make 1 or 2 adjustments, it comes to your door. You don't have to actually go shopping for 3 hours a week. There are lots of practical things one can do that can actually work very well and effectively, and highly successful people tend to be efficient. They find ways of shopping and cooking and managing that works much better than another way of doing it. So it's about finding on a practical level what you can do that's more efficient and works better, and what help you can get if you can get help. A lot of people feel it's terrible to ask for help. Terrible. I had a mom in the office this week. She's a client of mine who's having a 3rd child, and she was saying she doesn't know what's wrong with her because her mom, who lives in another city, said she'll come in and do a whole lot of cooking of meals, have them in the freezer, and so when the baby's born, and she said, no, Mom, I'll do it myself. And she said to me, and this whole session was, why did I do that? Because she feels she's got to prove something. She's got to make all the meals. So she's out here, her legs are swollen, she's got 2 other kids she's running around for, but she couldn't actually. And so it's not an uncommon thing I hear that people feel, even from their own moms, they don't want to ask for help. They feel they've got to do it, they've got something to prove. And so if it becomes sort of dangerous and it's really you're reaching burnout, often you have to ask yourself, what are my driving forces that are making my life much more difficult than they need to be? So a lot of our stress is self-generated by our thoughts, guilt, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm a bad mom, I shouldn't want to actualize myself, whatever thoughts we're having, or they're not doing things efficiently or trying to do them perfectly. However, we do need to have some stress management as well in place. And when I talk about work-life balance, I don't mean 50-50 or some kind of, people have these, what other people think are work-life balance. What do I mean by that? Some people would say, work-life balance means you've got a gym 5 days a week. Or you've got to go to yoga, and they have an idea of what that means. I am not afraid of work. I think work, if you enjoy your work, is actually very energizing. And for a lot of people, going to work and the stimulation of work and the creativity of work actually isn't burning them out. It's actually giving them a lot of energy. And therefore they don't need as much yoga or things that other people feel that they need. So your balance is, what do I need to balance out the areas that are my burnout areas? What do I need to make me feel more whole? And this is a very individual thing. So again, no one's mentioned this, but it's something that always used to bother me. I used to hear about women who go to yoga 5 times a week and meditating, and I think, I'm writing a book after hours and kind of thing. But it was exciting and challenging, and it wasn't actually burning me out. And so when I looked at it and looked at other people, I thought, actually, it doesn't have to be what other people are doing. We always come back to know thyself, what works for you. And not to be afraid of our power, because women have enormous power. And maybe that also taps in, I love this expression, women hold up half the world, because from a Jewish point of view, they say actually women hold up 90% of the world. Many years ago, there was a book called The Cinderella Complex. So you read, anyone else read it? Because that was probably a late 70s book. And it was actually a very good book in its time. It was written by a woman who, I think she was a journalist, but she was a writer. She got divorced, and she spoke about how what she learned about herself when she got divorced was that she was waiting for Prince Charming to come and save her again. So she realized that she was a journalist, she worked for a top, I think, New York newspaper. She was highly successful, but the minute she was on her own, she started feeling, on my own, I'm not okay, I have to have a Prince Charming. So she coined the term, the Cinderella complex, that we are grown up to believe that, we're little Cinderellas, and we need some Prince Charming to help us fulfill ourselves or to be strong in the world. And the whole thesis of her book was that, on the contrary, we shouldn't really need to be Cinderellas and wait to be rescued, that in our own right, we have to tap into our own inner strength. And that's what a lot of what Sheryl Sandberg in her way is saying, lean in. You have the strength, you have the power, you should if you want to. So when I read this book, I don't know why, but I had looked at the English, and again I don't have it on me, but of Ashes Chayil, if you actually read the Woman of Valor prayer that's said on a Friday night, and you read about that Jewish woman, it's actually mind-boggling. The whole thing is about her, and there's one sentence at the end about her husband. And what is she doing? She is having children, and she's up all night weaving and buying and selling properties, and she's a businesswoman, and she's making all the decisions about the house. I'm not really doing it justice, but she's busy in all kinds of areas. And her husband sits at the gate, discussing with the wise men. He's solving world problems. But when you actually read, I remember dividing it at the time to something like 10 careers that she was doing at the time. And I remember that it resonated with me, because as I was preparing the speech, I remember I held a baby and I was baking something and I was preparing the speech, and I thought, you can do a lot if you want to. We have that power if we want to. So from a Jewish point of view, the Jewish woman is seen as a powerhouse. And she's seen as being perfectly okay to do whatever it is that she wants to do. And we should not hold ourselves back and think we're not feminine or we're not good Jewish women if we choose to lean in. If we choose to assert ourselves and ask for a bigger salary, if we choose to work and do what fulfills us, or if we choose not to work and to do what we want to do at home and use our strengths there. We need to be okay with that. We need to know how powerful we are. And I think that there isn't enough spoken about really how powerful we can be and not be afraid. And even if the world calls us bossy boots or aggressive, we have to check ourselves, are we really that? Sheryl Sandberg says a beautiful thing. She says she's still a woman at the end of the day. And when she gets negative press, she sometimes cries. Her first reaction is to burst into tears. She says she doesn't see the men doing that, and then it takes her a while and she regroups and she moves on. And at the end of the day, we're still a woman, and people might not like the fact that she's making big decisions, but it doesn't mean she's what they say she is. Just like when I read her book, it wasn't what people were saying was in the book. So that's really the message that I wanted to share, that it is stressful to juggle. There are lots of things we can do to minimize the stress. And the last thing I want to say is the biggest part of our stress is what we tell ourselves. If we wake up in the morning and we say, not good that I'm working, everyone else isn't working, or the other way, but we'll talk about this because that's the topic. My poor kids, I'm leaving them at home, or whatever we tell, that creates a lot of our stress. But if we wake up and we say, it's okay, my family's actually fine, everyone's actually benefiting in lots of different ways, I like myself better than this, and we give our kids that message, really, there's no reason that everything shouldn't be okay. So those are some of the messages that I wanted to share, but I really would like people's questions and comments and have a bit of a discussion about it.
I like your concept of us defining ourselves. You didn't use the word defining, you didn't use the different conceptualizing ourselves, is that right? And I find it very interesting that women today, there is such a wide variety of women defining themselves in such different ways. And I think that's a very valuable thing. I never been myself somebody who, a long time ago, defined myself totally differently to the majority of my women contemporaries. In that majority of the women that I grew up with wanted children, wanted husbands. And I wanted it all. I didn't want a husband, I didn't want the children, but I wanted a career, I wanted to travel. And it's been years since I had to really define myself. Now I'm ready to perhaps want the husband, want the children in my 50s, mind you. But I just like the concept of the power that we have within to decide for ourselves how we want to live our lives.
And what you missed in the beginning was someone was saying she doesn't want to be judged. And I think you probably had a lot of judgment.
I have enormous.
As sisters, we should not judge. Everybody has a different path. That's right.
I continue to have judgments for my choices of not having conformed to the concept of getting married and having children.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. You don't get that often. Thank you. Is there another? Yeah?
I work full time, and my 2.5-year-old is at a daycare. And what bothers me a little bit worries me a little bit is that he spends a lot of time at the daycare, which kind of means that basically they kind of give him the values. It's a lot of hours in daycare, and I don't know, instead of maybe me shaping him, it's like they are. And and with that I'm struggling a little bit.
Did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I just want to I'm sorry. Sorry, were you referring to?
Yeah, were you going to respond to that, or your question?
I want to respond to that, and I actually want to tell a story that relates to it, and maybe it will actually say what I want to respond. I had my first children were twins, two twins, no, twins. And I was always a working mom, full time, and I love my job, and I love what I'm doing, and I love working. I can't see myself not working. I think I'll freak out. But I did have guilt that I didn't want to breastfeed my kids because I couldn't work and I had to be with them all the time. And then someone came to me and said, look, a friend of my husband came to me and he said, look, I have a problem because my wife just gave birth and she has too much milk. And we really don't know what to do because we don't want to dry the milk, but still she's suffering, you know, and do you mind if she breastfeeds your kids? And I said, at first I said, no way, you know. It's like I felt like Lilach feels, that someone else is going to get they're going to get attached to her because she's breastfeeding them, you know, and she's actually going to take my kids and be very attached to them. And I went to the doctor and I said, this is the situation. He said, go for it. You know, just what can happen? And I did it. And I'm happy that I did it because my boys got breast milk. It wasn't mine, but who cares? You know, they don't even know the woman today. They're not attached to her. They got what they got from me, and they're fine. They're both in university now. So what I'm saying is that the guilt comes from us. And if we are confident, and if we are absolutely 100% sure that what we are doing is the right thing for us, and if we are happy, then our kids are happy.
So I wanted to just ask you, did you want to comment
Yeah, I
on
was
that?
going to say, I have a little one. I breastfed her myself. And I went back to work when she was 4 days old, not full time, because I had to. And I struggled with the same thing. And what I found was two things. One is I had to swap daycares. And I found a daycare where when I walked in, I loved what they taught her because it was so aligned with what I could teach her, but it was different. And the second thing I found was that I had to adjust the number of days I worked, and that's changed at different times. So at 2 days I had to go back to 2 days, and at 4 days I increased it to 4 days. And then at 3 I went back 4 days and it was too much, because I felt it was too much. I felt it was too much, not for her, for me. Does that make sense? So I think sometimes when that discomfort, I can only speak for myself, but sometimes when there's that discomfort, I have to really look inside and say, what is this discomfort about? Because sometimes it's not about I'm working, sometimes it's about that isn't the right place for me and my child, even though everyone else thinks it's fantastic. And actually tuning in to say, what is this discomfort has been really helpful for me.
Do you want to comment on that?
Do you mind?
Yeah, no.
I'm in the process of adopting 7 children in my late 40s, 50-something. And I thought about that. And I find that children's values come from the parents. No matter how many hours they spend in daycare, no matter how many hours they spend at school, at the end of the day, their inner self, their attachment is to the parent. So they're going to form a stronger bond to that parent than to any worker that they're with the rest of the day. And I like her point that how important it is to send our children to either daycares or schools that have our values or that teach the values that we're comfortable with. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Do you want to comment on that?
I want to comment on that, just from another opinion, like from the other side. I actually really agree with that because I feel like the things that I get taught in school are really different from the values that I get and the opinions that I get taught at home. And even though that happens, I still feel it like that the opinions I get from home are my opinions because of that attachment, and yeah, I think that's.
And also you get the second perspective, the other perspective, so you can.
Well, that's what I wanted to comment on. So there are a few things. The one is that there is only one mom and it is a unique attachment. And that's what we do that's unique. We need to stay attached and we need to carry our child in our head. And that means that we think about our child. And we'll be the only ones that will decide if this daycare feels good or doesn't feel good. And our children know unconsciously, even if we don't tell them, that we are carrying them around. It's when there's no attachment where they will act out and they have insecure attachment. So our kids, especially when they're little, actually always, let you know when something's wrong. It's not a mystery. They will be bedwetting if they've already been dry. They will have tantrums. They will cling for dear life. They'll act out and they will let you know there's something wrong. But the second thing is, and I actually just read this last week in terms of learning, is that they've actually shown that kids that have more than one influence learn better at school. And it's part of what you say, that it's the idea that you're getting other perspectives, but it's even deeper than that. It's the idea of teaching them resilience. So I used to teach this many years ago, before we used the word resilience, that I used to say to parents, you need to encourage, don't let your children think you have all the answers. So when they reach a certain age and their dog is whatever, you say, let's go and ask the vet what we should do. It was before Google, you can tell now. Let's go and ask the vet, and I still say rather ask the person, or let's go to the pet shop, or let's ask someone else. Even if you know the answer, because what you need to teach your kids is that there are lots of answers, and when you have a problem in life, there are lots of resources that you can get. And so it's a really important thing to do. So when they're learning that the other people, as long as everything's well and they're not acting out, you are actually teaching them resilience. You're teaching them to relate to other people and to be independent away from you. Again, if we convey, oh my God, are you okay? What did they say? They pick up our anxiety about being close to other people. So, and there are lots of cultures, mine was one of them, South African, where kids grew up with nannies and were very attached to nannies, but the mother is the mother and the father is the father. It's how we manage that that's very important. So they'll let you know if there's anything wrong, but actually if you give them permission to love as many people and to learn from as many people, you help them actually be resilient and less stressed.
Thank you.
There's another thing about, it's a slightly on a different topic, but it's all fitting into bringing up robust children, and that is this idea about accepting one's life. And I don't mean just, everything, but what I mean is this, that we live in a world, I was speaking about this last night about narcissism, that kids today have grown up with a huge sense of entitlement. This is a big source of stress. It's also a big source of anger. My life should be like this. You have adults like this, where you actually figure out what is making them stressed. I should have this kind of a husband, this kind of a house, that kind of a picket fence, that money in the bank. And instead of living in the now, which mindfulness teaches, instead of being grateful for the now, our stress is caused by all the shoulds. So sometimes one has to say to a child, when they say, why do I say, that's just the way our life is, but it's okay. We don't always get everything that we want. And these are life values that, again, help a child in life. A lot of parents, I'll tell you also a true story. All my stories are true, and I don't know why I always say that, but I do. I once had a client who was referred, he worked in a lift company or something for a hotel that I did corporate work for. And he wanted his daughter to go to a particular private school on the North Shore. And he could not really afford it. And so they lived in the back room. His father was the janitor somewhere. They lived in the back room somewhere with a little hot plate. They lived in terrible conditions, so that she could put on this uniform every day and catch a train to the North Shore and go to the school. Now, he was teaching his daughter some really bad life skills because she didn't fit in there. She didn't fit in. She couldn't actually really make real fare. But this idea that life should be like that and we'll pretend, and it's something very freeing to say, this is what we earn, this is where we live, it's okay. This is what's meant to be. Gives people a lot of, so again, it's about us saying sometimes we have to work. Most of us at work have to work. We might love our jobs as well, but let's be honest, most of us have to work. That's the way it is. This is what's meant for us right now. We can make the most of it. Teach our kids that, about making the most of what life presents now, rather than being upset and bitter and feeling deprived. Yeah.
Okay, as one of only two males in this room.
Just immediately rose there.
Yeah, well, I'm glad he came in because I was feeling a little outnumbered before. And also as the husband of a beautiful wife who's in the room and the father of three gorgeous girls, I'd just like to give my perspective.
Yes.
Before kids, my wife was a preschool teacher, and a damn good one if I can say so. She worked in the field for over 10 years. When we started having kids, it was a whole new ballgame. I mean, in school, in preschool, she could leave at the end of the day, she'd come home relaxed, go back the next day, they weren't her kids. At home, that's where the stress started happening. Now, I'm employed full-time, I run my own IT business, very stressful job. I wish I could spend more time with the kids. I come home, some days I come home early, we get to have dinner together, many days I come home late and sometimes they're even asleep, and they've always asked, Mum, you know, make sure Daddy gives us a kiss, cuddle and snuggle when he gets home, when they're fast asleep. You know, but I must say I take my hat off to Vanessa because, you know, I get stressed in my job, but at the end of the day, she's a stay-at-home mum. She's got these kids most of the time. She's moulding them far more than I get to. I mean, I do as much as I can. I think I'm a pretty hands-on dad and, you know, loving husband and father and do what I can. But at the end of the day, she's with them most of the time. She, you know, that goes beyond any full-time career I could ask her to do. You know, obviously she hasn't gone back into childcare since we've had 3 kids. She helps me in my business as well in her spare time. She's often actually, you know, complaining and apologising to me that she can't help me more. And I'm like, you know, are you kidding? You know, you help me more than I can imagine. I mean, you know, as much as I love kids and as good a dad as I am, I don't honestly know if I could trade places with Vanessa. You know, I think she could probably do a better job in IT than I could being a, you know, stay-at-home dad. It's not easy. You know, sometimes she yells her head off. And, you know, everyone can watch the Super Nanny and all the rest of it and they say, you know, stay calm. But, you know, sometimes I can appreciate how the pressure builds up. And look, kids are kids. You know, they'll test us. And, you know, you're always, every time you find a solution to how to deal with them, they find another solution how to get around your rules. And, you know, they're always there trying to, you know, bend the rules, break the rules, you know, get away with as much as they can. But, you know, they're kids. I'm sure I did the same. But, you know, I'd like to say, you know, really admire mums in general.
Enjoy your kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.